Prepare to be utterly terrified as you witness the awesome firepower of the USS Midway. Take note of the legendary tier IJN battleship Yamato, which I think historically was sunk by aircraft. Well, history is repeating itself in World of Warships Legends. There's a single drop for 17k and 2 fires, another drop with 14k and 2 perma-fires. These fires are ultimately going to be lethal for the Yamato. He shoots down our remaining plane, but as we're traveling back to him with torpedo bombers, well, he goes down after we do 51,000 damage to him in the span of 2 drops. I think our teammates took his remaining hit points there, but by now, I think you get the picture, and if you don't, what you're about to see is, I think, my 3rd or 4th Midway game, and I end up getting a Kraken. Although, a little bit of peculiarity here. These 2 legendary tier carriers, the USS Midway and the IJN Hakuryu, are available as rewards for Bureau projects, but you have to buy these Bureau projects from the store. You can purchase them for 5,000 doubloons each, or 30 million credits each. I would honestly go for credits if it were me, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who have already forked over the doubloons, but none of those people have the carriers yet. Only the community contributors do, at least for the rest of this week, until Wargaming removes them from our ports. But as a consequence, since legendary tier carrier matchmaking is mirrored, LTCVs can only fight other LTCVs, and thus we CCs have to coordinate with each other in order to get any kind of footage in live standard battles. So I asked TommyBoy601 to help me out. He is on the enemy team, I think also in the USS Midway, and I think ultimately his team is going to end up winning, but not for lack of trying on our part. The USS Midway is an absolutely fearsome machine. It is a souped-up Lexington, and I think it's probably the better of the two, although one downside about it is that the planes are not as fast as the Hakuryu's planes, nor are they as healthy. You have to conserve your plane HP a lot more. I think the Midway also gets fewer planes than the Hakuryu, which the 1 or 2 times I played it on stream earlier this week, it didn't seem to me like it was especially capable of losing planes very quickly. The Midway, however, is quite capable of losing planes quickly, and you can find your reserves dwindling by the end of a match if you're not careful. But, of course, these planes pump out awesome firepower. You've seen the high explosive bombs in action against a Yamato, and now prepare to see the torpedo bombers in action against, well, another Yamato who is burning quite merrily, courtesy of my teammates there. As you can see, 2 planes from each squadron break off on the torpedo bombers and launch 2 torpedoes from each plane. This is because these are the Saipan planes, I think, or maybe it's more correct to say that the Saipan has Midway planes, only it has less of them. So basically, if you've played the Saipan, played against it, or seen any videos on it, this is more or less like the Saipan, but, well, better. And, frankly, a little bit too powerful. I think it's somewhat ridiculous, to say the least, that I could drop that Yamato for as much as I did and light 2 perma-fires and essentially deal 51,000 damage to him with 1 squadron. Of course, if you thought that was bad, well, then you need to see a drop where every single one of these bombs hits, because it is, well, it is absolutely outrageous. Take note of this Yamato, who is in the prime position for getting absolutely demolished. 22,000 damage and a fire to boot. Perfectly balanced, as the spiffing Brit, if you've ever watched him, would say. Certainly nothing wrong with this kind of firepower at legendary tier. absolutely fine. Obviously, this Yamato has a lot of counterplay that he could employ against us. He's simply choosing not to. Have you ever heard of just dodge? Well, that Yamato hasn't, but that's what you're going to have to try to do if you see a Midway or a Hakuryu in your match. These things are just a little bit ridiculous. I think I've explained before why I think CVs as a class are generally bad for the game, but this game in particular should really put it in perspective for you. We've racked up 47,000 damage and counting by that was the first squadron we deployed, I think. Maybe the first or the second. Certainly the first to do anything meaningful. In this Yamato here, burning, well, we've got, what is this? 8 torpedo bombers coming in, each of which drop 2 torpedoes, and this Yamato is all alone with no other ships around him to combine their AA firepower with, and, well, anti-aircraft guns really are not a counter for CVs. I lose absolutely nothing but my reload time on my armament by going back and forth on this Yamato and simply dropping torpedoes on either side. And oh look, there's a perma-flood to add to the perma-fires that the Yamato is now suffering from. Oh, it looks like he even takes a torpedo from one of the friendly destroyers before our last 4 torpedoes come in and secure our second kill. We've done 91,000 damage, and unfortunately, our team on the opposite flank has folded. I suppose that's the one downside of the USS Midway, is that you can't have 2 separate squadrons on 2 sides of the map at one time. If you could, then maybe I would have been able to provide my teammates some assistance over there, but it looks like Tommy Boy 601 has probably been instrumental in cleaning them up. In any case, there's only 4 ships left on the blue team versus 6 ships left on the red team. So we've got our work cut out for us, but that's no problem because we're in the USS Midway, the most balanced CV in the entire game, most likely. I think the spreadsheet will come to prove that, and our place on the leaderboard will actually come to prove that, because as we know, the leaderboards at the end of every battle are in fact science, and all you need is one data point to draw correct conclusions in science. Here we're messing up a completely easy drop to perform simply because we were distracted while we were playing the game. I live in a house now, as you may or may not know. Just moved there recently with my partner, and I think he was saying something to me as I was doing that, so I screwed up my drop. Nevertheless, we are able to take out whatever that was, the Republic. There's our 3rd kill. We've got 95,000 damage done. Shimakaze's coming toward our base, so we're going to have to go take care of that. But I think there is a Conqueror approaching our position, and I suppose that leads me into maybe another downside of the USS Midway, which is that it doesn't have very good concealment. So if you find anything traveling toward your detectability ring on the minimap, well, you're going to have to divert your planes over that way and try to take care of it before it can spot you. Although even if it does spot you, the USS Midway and the Hakuryu, for that matter, are both pretty well armored, at least on their decks. I think the Midway has something like 87mm deck armor, and the Hakuryu has about the same or less, or maybe it's reversed. I don't know. Either way, the deck armor on the Midway is enough to shatter the HE bombs on the Midway, and the same is true for the deck armor on the Hakuryu. And as we've already seen, these HE bombers are perfectly capable of penetrating the deck armor of a Yamato. So basically, these aircraft carriers have decks that are going to shatter most, if not all, HE in the game, except for maybe battleship HE, which means they're going to be quite tanky at long range if there is plunging fire. That deck armor is also not even overmatchable by the likes of things like Yamato, so there's that to think about too when it comes to long range fire. Basically, I had hoped we would never see legendary tier carriers brought to the game. I have played, as you may or may not know, on PC, and both the Midway and Hakuryu are incredibly strong carriers on that game. They're the Tier 10 tech tree carriers for their respective nations, and here they are now in World of Warships Legends with basically the same level of firepower that they enjoy on PC relative to the lower tier carriers, at least in my opinion. I've played some lower tier carriers on PC. I have not played the tier 10 ones because I don't really enjoy CV gameplay all that much, but, well, I've also played against the carriers on PC, and I can tell you a tier 8 carrier there feels a lot like a tier 7 carrier here, in that it's not necessarily pleasant to deal with, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas a tier 10 carrier, or a legendary tier carrier on World of Warships Legends, well, it is an oppressive menace that can absolutely dominate games if you know what you're doing. And, well, there's our Kraken Unleashed and 180,000 damage done with the USS Midway. Unfortunately, it's not going to be enough. That Kraken was enough to bring us over on points, but remember, Tommy Boy 601 is on the enemy team in also the USS Midway, and we've got only one battleship left alive on our team. So you've already seen what the USS Midway is capable of doing to battleships with both its torpedoes and HE bombs, so I suppose there's no point in really showing you the rest of it. Tommy Boy 601 takes down that battleship, and I was trying to get to the enemy base to stop their accrual of points, but I didn't start heading that way soon enough, and I didn't get there quick enough. So ultimately, this game is going to end in a rather tragic defeat, but not for my lack of trying. High caliber metal, Witherer, Kraken, and Clear Skies. Yes, the USS Midway is incredible. If you enjoy playing aircraft carriers, these legendary tier carriers are the cream of the crop. You better fork over your doubloons or your credits and start on that bureau project. But as for how these are going to be for the health of the game, I would say not good. Let me know what you think in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.